everyone, welcome to E-Content Development Center, Majlis Arts and Science College, Puramannur. Myself, Preeti, Assistant Professor, Department of English. Here, I introduce the poem Ode to Autumn by John Keats. After watching this video, the learner will be able to learn and appreciate poems. And also, it helps them to familiar with literary devices. And it helps the students to understand the structure of a poem. Before knowing the writer John Keats, it is necessary to understand Romanticism. What is Romanticism? Let's have a look on it. Romanticism, it was an artistic and intellectual movement that originated in the 18th century in Western Europe. It began with the publication of lyrical ballads by William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge in 1798. It is defined as a principled protest against classism. It stressed on strong emotion, imagination and freedom. John Keats was the leading figure of the second generation of Romantic poets along with P.B. Shelley and Lord Byron. Here is a picture of the writer John Keats. Before moving on to the poem in details, let's see some details about the writer John Keats. John Keats was born in 1795 in London as the son of Thomas Keats, a stable keeper, and Francis Keats. He was the eldest of 4 surviving children. His younger siblings were George, Tom, and Frances Mary. His younger brother Tom died of tuberculosis in 1818. In 1804, when Keats was 8, his father died from a skull fracture. In 1803, he began his studies at a small school in Enfield in England run by John Clerk. Keats was 14 when his mother died of tuberculosis in 1810. The same year, he left Clerk's school to apprentice with Thomas Hammond, a surgeon. Keats himself registered as a medical student at Guy's Hospital. After that, on doctor's advice, Keats sailed to Rome with his friend, the painter Joseph Savant. From there, Keats died at the age of 25 due to tuberculosis on 23rd February in 1821, and he was buried in the Protestant cemetery in Rome. Next, let's have a look into the literary career of John Keats. When Keats was 19, he made his first attempt in writing verse, an imitation of Spenser. With the help of his friend Leigh Hunt, published Keats' sonnet O Solitude in his magazine The Examiner in 1815. Then comes the first volume, Poems, in 1817. The lengthy poem Endymion was published in 1818 by Taylor and Hissey, which begins with the famous line, "A thing of beauty is a joy forever." The same year, he met Fanny Brown. Then Keats wrote his famous odes in 1819. Keats' description of Greek culture and art made him a Hellenistic poet. Keats, known especially for his sensuous description of the beauty of nature. Here, the picture of John Keats' epitaph, it includes the line, "Here lies one whose name was read in water." The major themes in Keats' poetry, they are the effect of time, change, life versus death, the mortality of human life, suffering and beauty, contrast between the imagined ideal versus the experienced real. Next, move on to the important works of John Keats. They are Hyperion, La Belle Dame Sans Mercy, Lamia, on first looking to Chapman's Homer. Then the important 6 odes. They are Ode on a Grecianer, Ode to Autumn, Ode on Melancholy, Ode to Psyche, Ode to Nightingale, Ode on Indolence. What is an ode? It is a type of lyrical stanza and an elaborately structured poem praising or glorifying an event or an individual, describing nature intellectually as well as emotionally. In classic ode, it is structured into 3 major parts: the strophe, antistrophe and the epode. Let's have a look into the background of the poem Ode to Autumn. It is the final work of John Keats, which published in a collection of poems known as Keats' 1819 Odes. It composed after a walk near Winchester one autumnal evening. The poem Ode to Autumn, written in 1819 and published in 1820. A little over a year following the publication of Ode to Autumn, Keats died in Rome. And The poem Ode to Autumn divided into 3 stanzas of 11 lines written in iambic pentameter. It's an attempt to find beauty in the neglected and deglamorized aspect of nature and life. The critical consensus about this ode says that it is a paean to the season of autumn. According to Harold Bloom, Ode to Autumn as close to perfect as any shorter poem in the English language. Next, let's discuss the poem in detail. Here is the first stanza. Season of mist and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless. With fruit the vines that round the thatched eaves run, to band with apples the most cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plumb the hazel shells with a sweet kernel to set budding more, and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells. Here Keats wants to say that autumn is a season of mist. It is a season when mist gather on trees or grounds, and also it is a season of ripe fruits. Next, he goes on to say that the warm rays of sun ripens the fruit. So it seems that the sun and autumn are worked together for the ripening of all kinds of fruits. Here they are conspiring that how to load wine creepers with the grapes. The village cottages are thatch covered. The vine grows along the eaves of these thatches. Here the second line is an example for personification. What is personification? Personification means giving human qualities to an inanimate object. Here, the poet elevates the sun to the level of a human being by saying that they are friends and they are conspiring. In the fifth line, the poet says that the apple trees are bent nearly to the ground because of the heavy weight of apples. The apple trees growing in the cottage gardens are covered with moss and weighed down with fruit. Here, poet says that all fruits are filled with sweetness. The gourd grows bigger and bigger. The hazelnuts are filled with a sweet kernel. Here, hazel is a plant that produces nuts that add delicious flavor to coffee. Really, spring is a season of flowers. But here, even in autumn, many flowers are bloomed and the bees suck the sweetness of these flowers. So, to the bees, it seems that these flowers represent the continuation of summer, and they are already collected so much honey in the summer season, now their hives are overbrimmed. Through this stanza, Keats portrays a flamboyant picture of autumn. Here is the second stanza of the poem. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swath and all its twined flowers. And sometimes like a gleaner thou dost keep steady thy leaden head across a brook, or by a cedar press with patient look thou watchest the last oozing hours by hours. In this stanza, Keats describes the occupations of autumn. Here, autumn is personified in 4 different ways. Firstly, if anyone seeks for autumn, they can see it like a woman sitting carelessly in the middle of the granary floor, and her hair is lifted by a gentle breeze. Here, autumn is compared to a woman. Then in the next line, autumn is seen as a reaper who has been engaged in reaping corn. While doing so, she falls asleep by the smell of poppies. Here, poppies are flowers that used to make opium, a drug that was popular in England in the 19th century. Then in the next line, autumn is seen as a gleaner who walks keeping his leaden steady by collecting grains, vegetables that are left lying after the harvest. The next line, poet compare autumn as a person who extracts juice by the cider press from ripe apples to make cider, and sits by patiently watching the drops of juices. Here, Keats personify autumn into 4 persons. They are careless farmer, tired reaper, gleaner, and the last one, cider presser. In this stanza, you might have seen some usage like thee, thou, hath, etc. They are Old English. Let's move on to the last stanza of the poem. Where are the songs of spring? Where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. While barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stable plains with rosy hue, then in a wailful choir the small nuts mourn, among the river shallows borne aloft, or singing as a light wind lives or dies. And full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne, hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft, the redbreast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. Stanza 3 begins with a question: where are the songs of spring? A. Where are they? Which the speaker immediately dismisses and says that don't think of spring when autumn has its own distinct music. The unique music can be identified when the sun is dying, the sky becomes rosy, and the clouds touch its rosy surface. At that time, the melancholic songs created by the buzzing of gnats, the bleating of full-grown lambs, the chirping of crickets, the whistling of redbreast, and finally the twittering of the swallows, they are gathering in large numbers ready for their winter migration. Here, in this stanza, Keats cites 5 creatures that keep music in the autumn season. Actually, the poet describes the stages of life by demonstrating the different phases of autumn. The poet says that autumn, that is ripeness and maturity, leads to winter. In the same way, man, after going through all the success in his life, has to die. But what makes Ode to Autumn distinct and even unique than any other poetical creations of John Keats is that instead of falling, he is ready to confront all the bitterness of life. Here, death doesn't have any negative connotation because Keats enjoy and accept the autumn or the maturity as a part of life. This is all about the poem Ode to Autumn. Thank you for watching.